everybody, my name is Tanya and this is my February wrap up. I've had some books that I've absolutely adored and some books that were quite a big disappointment, so there's a bit of a range in here and let's just get straight into it. So the first book I completed in February was a buddy read with a bunch of lovely ladies who I will link down below, and that was for A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. A Tale of Two Cities is one of those books that I've been meaning to get to for a very long time, and so I was really pleased for the chance, the prompt to pick it up. I actually listened to an audio version of this one. I listened to the audiobook narrated by Martin Jarvis, and unfortunately this was kind of one of the disappointments. So I still rated this one 3 stars on Goodreads. I did still enjoy it, but I went into this expecting to love it, and I didn't. Some basics: A Tale of Two Cities is the story of Lucy Minette and her father, and what happens when they're reunited after her father has spent a long term of imprisonment in the Bastille, and follows their story and some of their friends and some love interests for Lucy and kind of what goes on from there. Now, a big part of this is the setting. So the two cities that I mentioned, as I'm sure you're aware of, are Paris and London, and it's set during the time of the French Revolution, and very much looking at the the political situation and the tensions of the time that this is set in. And it's actually quite dry. The start of this is very much set up and very much kind of set up to a big finale, but it takes so long to kind of get there. I just felt like I never connected with this one. So because a lot of the focus is on the politics of the time, I never felt that any of the characters were very well fleshed out, and so I never really became invested in their storylines or came to care for the characters. They were just there to kind of move a story along, and I wanted to connect to this and I wanted to be drawn into the story, but I felt the whole time that I was kind of being held at arm's length and not feeling the emotion of what this is. Now, the ending is definitely quite emotional and definitely would have quite a large impact. But unfortunately, because of the blurb that I read going into this, I picked out what the ending was going to be quite early on in this, and so I think it didn't have the full impact that it should have on me, which was really quite a shame, because I think as it goes on, it definitely improves, and definitely what happens at the end has the potential to be very affecting. But as I said, being kind of having worked out what that twist was going to be, I just felt like I was held at arm's length for everything to do with this, that they didn't have very strong personalities and I didn't have very strong emotions when reading it, which kind of made it all fall a little bit flat. The next book I completed in February was another classic and another buddy read, and this time it was Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe, and this one I read with Alicia from Ex Libris and Jean from Jean Bookish Thoughts. The Mysteries of Udolpho was published in the late 1700s, and it's the story of Emily St. Aubert and what happens when Emily finds herself orphaned and placed in the care of her aunt, who she's never had all that much to do with, and then what happens when her aunt suddenly marries and they are taken to Italy, into the mysterious castle of Udolpho, and the terrors that take place there. So basically this one is completely over the top, completely eye-rolling, everything is dramatic, everything that could possibly happened, like, just, if it's not one thing it's another, and there's intrigue and mystery and love and murder, and I don't even know why a lot of the things that happened. It was just, did any of it make sense? I'm not quite sure if it did, but it's a huge sprawling epic of Emily's life and horrible things that happen to Emily, and Emily swooning and other people swooning, and just the theatrics, and it's just ridiculous, basically. And so if you're wanting a classic that is more approachable in terms of it's not so serious, it's very over the top, very dramatic, then I would definitely recommend giving something like this a go. The next book I finished in February was something that I've been reading since October, so it was about time I finally finished it off, and that was Smarter Than You Think by Clive Thompson. This is a book that I received in the Book Riot Quarterly Box, and it's all about how technology is changing our minds, and as he posits, how it's changing our minds for the better. Now, because I've read this over such a long period of time, I read the last little section of this in February, not really remembering what happened at the start. I remember little bits that he talked about in the front, but a lot of the detail of this was really gone, so I don't think I'm being very fair to this at all. I ended up rating it 2 stars on Goodreads, you know, because it was okay. I think I was quite enjoying it in parts, but it's not left any kind of impact on me. It's definitely my fault in the way that I've read it, but basically this is now off my currently reading shelf on Goodreads, and I'm pretty happy about that. The next book I completed in February was an audiobook, and I don't own a physical copy, and that is Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And this was just a total, spur of the moment listen I decided to start after finishing A Tale of Two Cities, and I really quite enjoyed it. So a while ago I did a dual review video of Speak by Laura House Anderson and Shy by Sean Pryor, which at a glance don't really seem to have much in common, but I grouped them together in a review video because of the feelings that they elicited in me, and that was kind of to bring back my feelings of shyness and my experiences with that, particularly in high school. And so in the comments of that video, Quiet was mentioned as something that I might benefit from or might enjoy, and I thought I would give it a go. So in Quiet, Susan Cain talks about introversion as something very separate from shyness, in that you can be a, shy extrovert, or you can be a outgoing introvert, but I think I would definitely put myself in the camp of shy introvert, so I've got it from all sides. So this kind of looked at, what introversion and extroversion are, and different examples of how introverts and extroverts might handle a situation, or how they might, communicate, and how they might misunderstand each other because they're looking at things from kind of their way of thinking versus, the opposite. And so that was all very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I can't say that it's, stuck with me hugely. Like, I did definitely appreciate it. I think there are some, things that we could all learn from thinking about that. But, maybe it's not completely life-changing, which I didn't go in expecting it was going to be. But I think it does a better job than something like Shy, which, again, I didn't necessarily expect that to be either. But in the blurbs, it kind of talks about Sean Pryor kind of, after an incident, stopping and wanting to explore what shyness actually is. And I don't know that Shy really has that answer. It's more a memoir of her own personal experience, whereas Quiet, I think, goes better into talking about what introversion and extroversion actually are, what, actual differences you can see in the makeup of people, and, maybe different parts of the brain that work in different ways to kind of hint as to what people are going to be. So if you consider yourself an introvert, or if you would like to understand a little bit more about how introverts think, I think this is definitely a good book to pick up, and definitely very readable, and I definitely think it worked well as an audiobook as well. Next up was something I was really excited to get to, and that is The Red House Mystery by A.A. Moon, which, as I've mentioned before, was a birthday gift from Dean Bookish Thoughts, and is the sole mystery novel written by A.A. Moon, the author of Winnie the Pooh. This one I would definitely recommend for fans of Agatha Christie or Sherlock Holmes. This one was published in the early 1920s, which is the time that Agatha Christie started writing as well, and it very much draws on Sherlock Holmes as an influence. So in this one we're following a murder that takes place at the Red House. The Red House belongs to a Mark Ablett, and he hears word that his long-lost brother, who has been in Australia for many years and who is known as, a not very good sort, is going to come and visit him. And what happens when the brother is found murdered and Mark is nowhere to be found. And that's kind of the basic setup of this one. Our detective is kind of an outsider who happens to arrive at the time. He is a friend of one of the guests that happens to be staying at Red House at the time of the murder, and he kind of gets roped in and decides to play Sherlock and enlists his friend to be his Watson, and they go about detecting what happened. So I really enjoyed this one. I think the dialogue in it was very amusing. I really enjoyed the interactions between the characters. Particularly I enjoyed Anthony, our Sherlock, and Bill, our Watson. I really enjoyed the mystery too. I did work out fairly early on where things would end up, but that didn't detract from my enjoyment of it in the least. I really enjoyed watching how it would play out and, seeing which details I'd gotten correct or incorrect. And I just thought this was a joy from beginning to end, and I would highly recommend it. The next book I completed in February is A Tiny Little Thing, and that is We Should All Be Feminist by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And as I mentioned in my Friday Reads video that I talked about this one in, I read this as kind of a pre-reading for the Feminist Orchestra book club that's starting up in March and has been organised by Jean at Jean Bookish Thoughts. I don't really have all that much to say about this. I might go in a little bit more detail if I end up doing some videos around the books from the book club. This of course is based on the TED Talk that Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie gave, and kind of outlines her personal view on feminism and it's very well written. It is definitely an easy read. It only took me 20 something odd minutes to read this one, and I definitely agree with what she expresses in this, but it didn't necessarily leave a great impression on me beyond that. But I definitely think this was a good place to start in terms of reading about feminism. It's quick and easy, it's definitely a compelling read, and I really need to get back and read more books by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. There's still a couple that I have not read of hers. I think she's a fantastic author, and it shows in this too. The next book I don't have here because it had to be returned to the library, but that is a graphic novel, and it was Bitch Planet Volume 1 Extraordinary Machine by Kelly Sue DeConnick and Valentine DeLandro and a host of others. And I didn't quite know what to expect going into this one because I'd heard a lot of hype leading up to its release, and then I'd heard a lot of disappointment after its release. I had flicked through it and wasn't very impressed by the illustration style when I saw it in a bookstore, so I was kind of not so excited about it myself, but when I was able to get it from the library, I thought I would give it a go and see what I thought about it. So after being quite excited and then quite let down, and I didn't go into this with very great expectations at all, and I was definitely pleasantly surprised. I quite enjoyed the storyline behind this one. The art style, as I mentioned, is quite an old-fashioned style, and it wasn't necessarily so appealing to me, but I found a lot more to like in it than I had at the quick flick that I did in the bookstore. I'm sure I don't actually have to say all that much about this one because it's been everywhere on Booktube, but basically Bitch Planet is the name given to the place where non-compliant females are sent, and non-compliance in a variety of means, but basically that means we've got a quite volatile mix of women on this planet together, and there's a lot of violence and riots, but basically follows what happens when they go about putting together a team for quite a violent sport, whose name I've forgotten already. And I actually found myself quite caught up with the characters. I definitely came to care about some of the characters in there. And parts of this were quite sad, parts of this made me laugh, parts of it made me cheer. I definitely think there are some good characters to root for in this one, and I'm interested to see where the storyline goes next. And then comes my biggest disappointment for the month, and something I actually ended up giving 1 star to on Goodreads, which I'm still slightly conflicted about, but I'm standing by, and that is Pastoralia by George Saunders. I have heard fantastic things about George Saunders, not just this collection, but I've been meaning to read it for ages. I've had it out from the library quite a long time, finally got around to reading it, and I just didn't like it at all. I kind of hated it. So Pastoralia is a collection of 6 short stories, and I didn't connect with any of them. I found the dialogue just to be horrible. I really didn't enjoy the way people spoke in this at all. I think partly that is intentional, but I hated the dialogue and the way that this was expressed, and it was a common theme to all of the stories. They all felt very similar in that kind of tone, and that just, nope. So if you've read other collections by George Saunders as well as this one, and think that the tone or the dialogue in this one is very different to his other work, do let me know, because I might give him another chance, because I have heard such great things, but this just, no, it didn't work for me at all. I think this is a book full of, rather horrible people doing horrible things and saying horrible things, and I just didn't care. Thankfully, I followed up Pastoralia with a book I absolutely adored, so that worked out very well, and that was my Agatha Christie of the month, and that was A Murder is Announced. Now this is one of her Miss Marple mysteries, and it's one that I had never read before. However, I'm in the unique situation of already knowing the whodunit, as I've actually seen this one performed as a play. And so some of the finer detail had faded. It's been several years since I've seen the play, but I did very clearly remember who the whodunit is and parts of the mystery, and further parts came back to me, and I picked things in advance going through. But I just absolutely adore this one. I think it's fantastic, and I am so pleased to have finally read the actual book of this one. I've been waiting for it to come up in my read through, and now that it's arrived, it definitely did not disappoint. And so it's following the inhabitants of a small country town, and the local paper is kind of the authority on everything that's going on in the town. And one day they find an announcement in the paper saying that a murder is announced for this evening at 6:30 at a specific residence, and it's not known how to see this. A lot of people assume that it's one of these kind of murder parties where somebody is made to be the victim and the other participants have to kind of detect and find out who the killer was. And so several inhabitants of the town kind of descend on this house at the time that is slated for the murder to kind of see what's happening and to join in the fun. But as you would expect from an Agatha Christie, a murder actually does take place and things go on from there. As with any Agatha Christie, this one twists and turns, and like I said, I remembered the whodunit in this one. I remembered a lot of the twists that came with it, and others I remembered more and more as I went along, but I think this one is a very intricately plotted, very well done story that I would highly recommend. These are books that I managed to read in February before the UnderHypedReads Readathon started. So if you read any of these ones or have any questions about them, do let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!